Okay, hello and welcome back everyone to this second introductory session for this course on Introduction to Machine Learning using Python. And if you've seen my previous video, I did tell you that in the initial sessions of this course we're going to look at how to use Python, and slowly we're going to move towards machine learning. So without wasting any time, I hope you can see my screen as I can see it right now. What we're going to do is we're going to use an online code editor for the Python which we're going to learn. Now it's completely up to you which editor you want to use. So it's not a hard and fast rule. You can use PyCharm, you can use Atom, you can use Sublime Text, any editor which you prefer. I personally prefer repl for this course because first of all it's completely online. You don't need to download any software on your computer for this. All you need to do is just head over to repl.com. So I already have created an account for the purpose of this course, but I can still show you how you can just if you're going on the first time. So you just head on to repl.com and you just click here on start coding, and I actually already have logged in. So if you haven't, you will get an option to either create an account or you can log in via Google, right? Any Google account. So you can, and it's completely free of cost. You don't need to pay anything for it. So you just log in here, and let me show you how exactly we're going to create your first repl. Okay, so once you have created a profile, you should see something similar to this. You should always have this option on the left hand side, and if you click on create, you will get an option of creating a repl. Now because now Repl has literally all the languages which you can think of, and many more. So Python is right up there, and we click Python and we call it maybe introduction 2 because I already created introduction, and you just click on create repl, right? So this is the screen which you should be able to see in a few seconds once it loads and sets up the entire system for you. Now there are different options on the side where which most of these we will not be using at this point in time. Later on maybe we need them. You can also change the display settings right here, so you can use the light theme if you want a white background. I personally prefer the dark theme. It's easier to read and a bit lighter on your eyes as well. So this actually is your editor. So this is where we're actually going to type our code, and this on the right is actually your console. So whatever we do here is going to be printed here. And if we go on shell, for the purpose of this course we do not need shell, so I'm not going to get into the details of it. Apart from this, you have some more options when it comes to the stackability of the editor, how you want to, you can add a file here, add folders, etc. But once we reach that stage, I'll let you know more about it. But for this moment, what I need you to do is create an account on Repl, reach this screen where I am. It should, read something as main.py right here. The console, the shell, and you can always go back to your account right here, and you should see all the replets which you have created right here on your screen. So once again, if you just click back on introduction 2, you can name it whatever you want. That's completely up to you. So this is what you should be seeing, and at this point we are ready to roll. So let me know if you face any difficulties in doing this. It's a very simple process, to be honest, but if you do face any difficulties, just put them in the comments below. I'll even drop my email in the description below, so you can drop me an email if you face any difficulties, and I'll be more than happy to help you out. Once you've done this, get a bottle of water, be a bit patient, come and sit here because we're going to start this interesting world of Python. And as I've told you in my previous video, it's not going to be very quick. It is time consuming, but I can assure you it won't be boring at any point in time. You can keep a notebook with you if you want. You can make some notes out of it, because some of these things, when we are doing it, it seems that it's easy, but after a point in time we tend to forget some of these things. So we don't want to do that, and once you are prepared, let's get started. Okay, so I hope that you have been able to successfully register yourself on Repl and you are seeing the same screen as I am, just with your account right here and whatever file name you have provided to it, right? So in this lesson, we're going to cover the very basics of Python. We're not going to get into any complications, but I just want to get you a bit more comfortable with the platform and with the language. So to begin with, and I'm sure if you have come across Python at any stage in your life, this is like the most famous or the infamous thing which we always do, and which is hello world, right? That's the first thing which literally all coders type the very first time. What is the story behind it? Even I would love to know. I think it's the computer saying hello to the world and something related to that. But if you know the details of the story, please do type it in the comments below. So let's start with something known as the print function, right? Very important in Python because whatever you're writing in the backend does not necessarily get printed to the user out there. So there might be thousands of lines of code which you're actually writing out there, but many of them might not be visible to the user. And a simple example of that is if we go, if you just right click on any page out there. So let's just look at Google, for example. So if we go to google.com, all we see on the screen is literally this, right? It's literally just Google, a few languages and a few settings here. But if you actually right click anywhere and if you click on view page source, whoa, so that's a lot of code for a page. It's almost 217 lines of code for a page which literally is like this. I mean, so a lot is happening in the back end, right? But end of the day, as a user, we don't see all of it. We only see what has been actually printed on the console. So let's begin by simply typing the command print, and it will. So the best thing about Repl is that it actually starts giving you these options of what exactly you're supposed to do with the function. So even if you click here, it will be the same thing because we already type print. So if we type print and we need to put a parenthesis around it because in Python 3 it's actually required, and we put a double quote and we write hello world, maybe say an exclamation mark, and then all we have to do is click on run, and voila. So congratulations, you have written your first code. I know it's not that exciting, but we have to begin somewhere. Okay, now there are a few things here which I want you to keep in mind. If you've seen that, if I remove the parentheses right here, let's see what happens. It's always fun to experiment with stuff. So this is actually your first bug, right? I'm sure you've heard about this term called bugging, debugging in codes, etc. So where did this term come from? I have heard a few stories about this one, but I'm not entirely sure if they're true. So I would like you to find out and let me know where the term bugging and debugging comes from. But jokes apart, we are at a junction where you have actually faced your first debugging right here, right now. So let's try to read what's on this side in the console. So it says that file main.py, this is actually the file which we're working on. Line 1, print hello world, syntax error. So that is the kind of error which we're getting. And the best thing about Python is that if you see this very small arrow right here, it actually shows where the error is persisting, and it says there's missing parenthesis in call to print, right? So as I told you, in Python 3 it's very, very important that we put parentheses around the print functionality, otherwise it will provide us with some sort of an error. So once again, if you put the parentheses around and we click on run, the code should work absolutely fine. But what about if we use or not actually use the double quotes? So why do we have to put double quotes around it? And you've seen the moment I removed the double quotes, the color of the text just changed, right? So let's give it a shot. I just removed the double quotes, kept the parentheses because the system is asking us to do that. But let's just remove the double quotes and click on run. And once again, Now this is a different form of error. If you remember earlier, we had a very clear instruction here that the parentheses were missing, but now it says invalid syntax. So why would it call it invalid? All we've done is just remove the double quotes. Guess what? That matters a lot to the computer. Especially when it comes to Python, it matters quite a lot because any text which comes within double quotes is actually known as strings. So a very simple way of understanding strings is you can imagine sort of a necklace. You can imagine sort of literally a string, right, which is just tied with each other. It can be pearls on a necklace or anything of that sort. So Python actually reads any text under double quotes as strings, and that's the only way it can actually print out on the console right here. Obviously, there are exceptions to it, and we will talk about them as we go through the course. But for now, we have actually covered two, not exactly, actually, we've covered three very important concepts right now. So, whenever we run the print command, we have to put parentheses around the text, and we need to put double quotes around a text, which makes it a string. Third part was the debugging aspect, right? If we make a mistake somewhere around here, it will throw an error, and so rectifying this error is actually known as debugging. So once again, we have put the double quotes around the text and we click on run, and here we go. So we are back to where we started. We have our print statement ready. Moving on. As a programmer, you will face a lot of errors, and this is all coding is about, because you will be writing hundreds and thousands of lines of code, and somewhere or the other you're going to get stuck, or there might be some errors which you do not really understand and how to rectify those. So there's always a solution to it. So once again, if we try to say remove one of the double quotes, sorry, my bad, and if we click run, so once again we have this error, right? And now if you see, the error is a bit different from what we had before. So this one says EOL while scanning string literal. What does that mean? I have no clue. Okay, and if you also are in the same boat as mine, then we have something, we have a friend out there who we can always use. So we'll just copy this text, and yeah, you guessed it right, we'll just go to Google, right? I can't even type Google anymore, so I don't know what I'm gonna do. And if we just paste it right here, so here we go. Now, if we ignore the first link, what I want you to focus on is this website called stackoverflow.com. Right, this is actually like a gold mine for programmers. If you face any difficulty while using or coding at some point, you can just type your error in Google, and or you can just directly head over to Stack Overflow and search your error right here as well. So and you'll see a lot of answers, and people are really helpful in this community. Now if you see a few of these answers, actually the first one itself gives you a hint that you're not putting a double quote before the end of the line. Now we can always go back to our code and be like, oh yes, we actually missed a double quote, right? It's as simple as that. But the whole objective of this activity is that I want you to be introduced to stackoverflow.com, because this is going to be such a lifesaver for you when you're doing some project, when you're say creating a game on Python, or when you're doing something else and you just get stuck at some point, right? So this is where you can head over to, and most probably you'll get your solution right here, or else you can just go through a few other websites like Ask Python as well, Python Pool. But I would prefer websites which are more are of a discussion forum. So you actually have other users who have undergone the same issue, and many of these people are really helpful. So you can just ask them if the answer is not there in the community, and I can assure you that someone or the other will find you the answer. Okay, so let's head back to our code editor. I hope that everything till now is going smoothly for you and you're following whatever I'm doing, because we haven't done a lot right now. But what we have done is we have understood how to print a variable and sorry, not a variable but a text in Python. We know what are the rules of printing, so we need to put parentheses and we need to put double quotes around the text whenever we want to print it. Apart from that, we know how to debug a code as well, and we also know how to use Stack Overflow. So moving on to the next part. Okay, now what if we want to print a number out there, right? These are alphabets, but what if we want to say print double quote 24? What does the system do with it? Let's just find out. That's the easiest way to do it. It prints out 24. Easy as that. But what if we actually remove the double quotes this time and print again? Guess what? It still prints 24. Weird, right? Well, that's what coding is all about. So turns out that when it comes to numbers, you actually don't need double quotes out there, and because numbers are called as integers, right? So integers are something which can actually be printed on the console even without double quotes. I know this can be a bit confusing, but there are reasons for this, because when we talk about a concept known as concatenation, right, or concatenate or combine two different alphabets or letters in Python, this is very essential, because the system doesn't read things the same way as we do, and it needs to distinguish between what is what. So for example, we want to print both these statements in a single line. So suppose we let's just delete these and type a new line where we say print your, okay, so we need to put double quotes and we say your age is let's say 30, right? Now, and we just print it out, so it prints out just fine. But what if we actually want the user to type their age, and we should have a system where we can actually publish whatever or print whatever age we are getting as an input from the user, because this number will not be the same, right? If we are asking the user for a certain input, then this number is going to change and we want to print that number. So how do we do that? This is where I'll introduce you to two new concepts of Python known as a variable and an input function. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about a variable, right? What is a variable? So in Python, if we want to store some information, so for example, if we use this command and we just click on run, then this is going to come right here. But the system is not storing any information right here. Okay, this is something which we have just printed, and once the system is closed, for example, this is just gone, right? We have not saved it anywhere. So, and if we want to change it, so for example, if I have to print someone else's age, do I again say print and I say parentheses, double quotes, and I say your age is 40, for example, right? And then I click on run again and I get both these lines. But you can imagine this is very time consuming and not productive at all, because if we have to literally print and type everything separately, then what's the use of using a computer language, right? So that is where the role of variables comes in. So what a variable does is it actually stores some sort of information within it, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to remove all of this, and we can call variables anything. The only rules to a variable are that if you have multiple words in a variable, so for example, we create a variable called age, right? We use the equal to marks and we store some information in it, say 30, right? And we can have another variable called height, right? So if we say someone's height is, say, I don't know, 150 in centimeters, right? Now we want to create another variable, and we want to call it city of residence. So if we call it city of residence, this is actually wrong. Why is that? Because we have gaps in between, right? So, and if you just click on this as well, it literally says invalid syntax. Okay, So whenever we talk about any variable name in Python, there are certain rules that we cannot use spaces in between. So if you type city of residence, this is going to come out as invalid syntax. So what we can do is we can actually use underscore in between, and then this would be a valid variable, and we press equal to, and we can call it anything, right? Say New York, for example. But again, this would have to be in double quotes because it's a string. So how does a variable actually help us? So now if we have to print one of these variables, for example, we want to print the age of a person. Now we don't actually need to put the number here. We just can write age, and if we run the code right here, it's actually going to print 30. And another beauty about variables is that suppose we want to change the value of this variable. So now we want to define age as 40, and once again if we print the age variable, it's going to update itself on its own. But now because we have two print functions right here, it's going to print out both of them. So you can see the 30 and the 40. Now what if we only want to use one of them? One option is always to delete this function, but the thing is, whenever you are coding, you always want to remember what you have deleted, or the best option is actually not to delete anything but to comment it out. So how do you comment out a line in Python? You simply go to the beginning of the sentence and you put one second, hashtag right here. So now you can see the color of the line has changed and it has gone completely green. That means that the system is not going to read this line as a code, but it's actually going to read it as a comment. So this is quite useful because whenever you are coding, you might, as I told you, you might be writing thousands of lines, and in between you might need to remember what you had written and why you had written that. In that case, comments are really useful. So now if we run the code again, it's not going to print out this line, but it's actually going to just come out with the term 40, which was the updated value of the variable age. So initially we put age as 30, but now it has come to 40. Another important aspect of Python is the input function, right? So this is something which we have put, but what if we need the user to provide us with an input? So what we can do there is simply we can use the input function, and right. So now we actually know how variables store values, and as I already told you, whenever it comes to integers or numbers, you actually don't need double quotes. But if you are storing alphabet in the variable, you then need to use double quotes because these are strings. So once again, we can just simply try print, say, the city of residence of a person, and once again if we go and print, it should come up with 40 and New York, right? But what if we had stored New York simply without double quotes, and if we try to run this code, it is going to throw an error saying that this is invalid syntax. Now the funny part is that because the error was in line 3, um, so the code literally stopped right there. Whatever we did here in line 6 and 7 was absolutely fine, and there was no error in what we had done. But the problem is the system has not moved beyond this line. So the computer found an error right here and it stopped reading everything beyond this. And that is why it is so important to not have any errors in your code, because if there's an error in line 3, and suppose you have written, say, 1,000 lines of code, everything else you have written is completely useless because the system threw an error right here and it's not going to go beyond that. So I think that's quite a lot of information for this. Even if you have not done a lot of coding right here, but you have learned certain functionalities, and I really don't want to stretch your mind beyond this. But in the next section of this video, we will continue with the input function, and we will also talk about certain rule exceptions when it comes to typing under double quotes and single quotes. So see you there.